Good day, everyone. I am Jasmine, and I'm going to discuss about Socratic dialogue and the structures and function of a Socratic dialogue. So, what is a Socratic dialogue? The Socratic dialogue is a formal method through which a group 5 to 15 people finds a precise answer to a common question under the guidance of the moderator. What is happiness? What is integrity? And can conflict be fruitful? Do not confuse the Socratic dialogue with the so-called Socratic or Hellenistic method developed in the works of Plato, in which Socrates often uses this method to help people find the contradictions in his tentative definition of universals. The method of the dialogue. The method of the Socratic dialogue is as rewarding as its goal. It involves group decision making by consensus, which is distinctly unlike most other modalities of group functions. Members are allowed to share their insights, questions, doubts, and objections, and all will be considered to reach to a conclusion in the allotted time. Either they succeed or fail to do so. The method of making decisions by consensus is in clear and stark contrast to other group methods. The failure of other group methods is obvious to all those who work under imperfection. There are many options as to what method should be used. Debate, ballot box, hierarchical, bane of academic and political life. Those are the options that could have been used for the method of dialogue. However, those method mentioned above has its downsides. The debate might be rushed since there is a winner and they might be swayed by their biased opinions. A ballot box which people might enable to participate, hence they don't give interest at all. A hierarchical where there might be no participation amongst people. Lastly, the bane of academic and political life, which surely has unsatisfactory or unwholesome compromises. Method of consensus, jury deliberation. Since method of consensus is not an effective way to use, the participant then realize that the closest to their option is the jury deliberation, where jury members must entertain and overcome any reasonable doubt excuse me, before expressing a conviction. So much participants in a Socratic dialogue before articulating a universal definition. There are three levels or order of discourse in a Socratic dialogue. First, the discourse of the dialogue itself. Second, strategic discourse about the direction or shift of the dialogue as it unfolds. Third, meta-discourse about the rules governing the dialogue. The facilitator plays no contributory role in the actual first-order discourse. He simply transcribes the proceedings at each stage according to the prescribed structure. The facilitator plays a minimal role in second-order strategic discourse, but he may offer some suggestions about viable strategies. The facilitator does play a role in third-order meta-dialogue. A meta-dialogue may be requested at any time by any group member who seeks clarification about a rule or any other matter governing the dialogue as a whole. The facilitator is responsible for answering meta-dialogical questions. The facilitator may also initiate a meta-dialogue at any time if in his judgments Some procedural point requires clarification. Thus, the facilitator of a Socratic dialogue is like the conductor of an orchestra. He has no explicit voice in the score, but has a meta voice in conducting the performance. The structure of dialogue. Each member of the group is then asked to summarize an example from his or her own experience, which purports to embody or otherwise to illustrate the universal in questions. The group will participate and will throw questions to each person's example when the simplest questions can make a big impact to the whole dialogue. The Socratic dialogue has a very specific symmetric structure which may be likened to the shape of an hourglass. It is the widest at the top and bottom, and narrowest at the waist. One begins at the top with universal questions under consideration. What is integrity? The group must then figure out where the universal is manifested in the example. For example, if the question is what is integrity, the group must figure out where the integrity is in this scenario. What step or step does it happen at? What step does it happen between or among? The list goes on. After that, the group must come up with a definition of integrity that appropriately defines the object they've discovered in the example. The group reaches the thin waist of the hourglass after agreeing on this concept. The universal in question has now been narrowed down. This is the conceptual structures and roughly the temporal structures midpoint. The conversation broadens from here. The working definition is then applied to each of the remaining cases, which have been summarized, transcribed, and shown but have not been developed on. If the definition is truly universal, it will fit each case. If not, it will need to be adjusted. The group will then present counterexample near the bottom of the hourglass, attempting to weaken or falsify their definition. If changes are required, they are made. If not, the group will have completed its missions. How to prepare for a dialogue. To take part in a Socratic dialogue, you don't need to be a philosopher or have any philosophical qualifications. The dialogue's compelling presumption is that universal truths are rooted in our individual experiences. The dialogue's goal is to get to the universal from the specific. There is never reference to philosophical literature, and there is no necessity for there to be. The chosen question is addressed not by stating what Plato or Nietzsche had to say about it, but rather by discussing what the group members had to say about it. We all have different perspectives and can think for ourselves. In a Socratic dialogue, it is not permissible to refer to published works. Instead, it is necessary to refer to concrete personal experience. The synthesis of plural experience in the sphere of philosophical arts can capture more truth and hence greater universality than the ruminations of any single mind. No matter how great in size, the discourse is more like a symphony than a solo. As a result, the greatest preparation is to keep an open mind and set a good example if the question is known beforehand. The problem: what is X? What is X? Questions are the most effective. As a result, questions such as what is integrity? what is happiness and what is liberty, and what is justice, are all suitable candidates for a Socratic dialogue. If feasible, the group should choose each question ahead of time, in conjunction with the facilitator if necessary. Example include the following. Following the selection of the question, each group member should consider an example from his or her own life that exemplifies or embodies the desired universal. The following are the characteristics of a viable example. It should be completed in a timely manner, with all of its repercussions resolved. It should not be overly emotional, as this could jeopardize rational conversation. It ought to be as short and straightforward as feasible. It should be a first person example, and the exemplar should be willing to answer comprehensive questions from the audience. Participants should prepare their example ahead of time. The general rule: while the facilitator is responsible for guiding the group through the dialogue, each participant is asked to abide by the following rules, which, if followed, conduce to a rewarding experience. Express your doubts, be attentive to others, refrain from monologue, ask to hypothetical questions, make no references to published works, strive for consensus. Criteria of a good example: should be a first-person experience, should be close in time, should not be too emotional, should be brief, should be simple, exemplar, should be willing to answer question. So, Socrates, the renowned Greek philosopher, believed that finding the truth was difficult for most people. During his time, he had to deal with the sophists, a group of people who believed that human being could never acquire truth. Socrates, unlike the sophists, tried to establish the steps to follow in order to illumine the truth and liberate oneself from error. Socrates was convinced that truth could be discovered and that men might be taught to seek it out. Definition of Socratic dialogue. Excuse me. Thus, Socrates developed the Socratic dialogue, a form of the Socratic method in which conversation is used to find the value and truth of individuals' opinions. During this conversation, members of a group think carefully, slowly, and deliberately. Hence, the Socratic dialogue must not be confused with a debate, discussion, or brainstorming session because it's a methodological investigation that engages participants in a common causes. Socratic dialogue, there are three distinctive levels. The first level is the dialogue or conversation itself. The second level is strategic discourse, which describes the shape of the dialogue as it unfolds. The third level is called meta-discourse because it relates to the rules for conducting the dialogue. Example of Socratic dialogue. To begin an exercise of Socratic dialogue, a group leader or facilitator directs group members to think about the answer to some universal question. Some examples of typical questions asked are: what is life? What happens to the soul after death? What is happiness? The Socratic dialogue should not be confused with the Socratic method, which was developed by Plato, Socrates' famous student, to help individuals uncover contradictions in their own universal definition. Next, during a Socratic dialogue, Group members work together to arrive at common consensus, which an agreement based on their own decision making. Every participant gives his own her idea regarding the universal question, and the whole group considers every point made in an allotted time frame. Because there is no one winner in this dialogue, it is an enterprise of consensus that has many attractive values such as stability, attentiveness, and thoughtfulness. Also, Socratic conversation is a type of argument of series of arguments. In rhetoric that uses the question and answer method used by Socrates in Plato's dialogues. Platonic dialogue is another name for it. And that's all. Thank you.